just to review very quickly, for those who weren't here. So we set over from Mr. Melio, and he's bothered basically with the question, what's the point of doing the whole Seder? Now, we know the story already. We've done this before. We know the story already. The kids just learned it in school. Everything, like, it's not new. So he says that Sharon Tzias Mitzrayim, the Tzibur Tzias Mitzrayim is that even if your mind your intellect might be smart, it might be a chacham, but your lave is amaretz. The person has an inner subconscious, is an inner child, whatever it is exactly, is an inner subconscious, is lave, that you can't talk it with intellect. So even when you know things, right, this explains the concept of many times people will do things where they know it's wrong, or they know it's bad for them, and they'll do it anyways, right? There's a disconnect between the lave and the seichel. So in the Leil Seder, we're trying to talk not to the seichel. The seichel, you know, afilu klona, we'll see in a minute, afilu klona chachamim, klona nevanim, klona zakenim, klona yenes hatari. Even if we know everything, still there's a mitzvah be mesaber tzis mitzrayim, because the idea is to get into your lave. And he discusses how, he says this is a klal gadol in the whole Torah, it's a very important klal in the Torah, that there's a difference between a person's lave and a person's mind. So, and then he goes through the Haggada, a few places, he gives a few examples of how Chazal set up the Haggada in a way with extreme chachma in order to be able to get that it's talking to a lave. Because how do you talk to a lave? So he says the same way you talk to a child, that's the way you talk to a lave. When you're teaching someone, there's special techniques to teaching someone, and those techniques are what you use in order to talk to a person, to talk to your heart also. So we'll just open up the Haggadas and we'll go through a little bit, beginning, and show you some of the things, some Pashup Pshat in the Haggada, and some of the things that he points out. It's not only from what he points out, this is a mix of a bunch of different things. So we're on page 24, right in the beginning, and although it's starting with the beginning, the common problem that happens is that people focus a lot on the beginning, and then by the time you get up to the middle, you know, you're kind of like, everyone's hungry and you heard enough already, all the kids got already said 6 things, so okay, let's just rush, and then you rush to the end. And the whole idea that we're saying from the Mifta Melio is that Chazal set up the Haggada with tremendous chachma in order that this is the way to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Tzibur Tzias Mitzrayim. How? By following the order of the Haggada. And the idea is not, you know, read in Hebrew and don't really understand, and then, oh, I have a vart on Hashta, and like say like a vart, and then like keep reading, and then, oh, I have a vart on this, and then keep reading. The idea is to understand the flow of the Haggada and to understand the ideas that the Haggada is trying to teach, and that way you get a flow of the entire Haggada. So even though we're going to start with the beginning, but you know, hopefully we'll get through a bunch of it, and the idea is to have a natural flow where every part of the Haggada is being focused on evenly and clearly to understand what the Haggada is saying, and not just to say varts.
That implies that parts of it have to be said in a language that everybody understands.
You're supposed to say all of it in a language that everyone understands. It's not reading. It's not a reading exercise. I mean, if they don't understand it, then I think you should say everything in a language that everyone understands.
Usually it's a debate between the different parties, because some people want to hear Hebrew, some people want to hear English, some people want in different languages, so it becomes a debate as to what we're going to do.
But it shouldn't be a debate, because you don't...
Everyone has to understand that.
Yeah. When you're the only guy who doesn't know Hebrew, then you got a problem.
It is a problem.
It is a problem.
Well, that's what they have arts for. Or that's how you prepare before. Well, if you prepare before, then you'll know.
But you don't fulfill if you don't understand it, do you?
If you don't understand anything you're saying,
if you don't understand the mind.
I don't know, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, maybe, I'm not sure if you have to understand every single word of Maggid in order to be Mekayim, but there is minimum amounts that you have to understand, and there's certain places that it's pointed out that make sure to understand over here. But if you want to understand, if you want to be Mekayim properly, you want to go through all the steps and understand all of them. It's difficult without preparation because it's written in concise. The Mishnah, the Haggada was written by a Mishnah, and it was just like a Mishnah. It's difficult to just read and understand. You have to look at it and try to understand it, and it's not so easy just to read and understand. It's not just a question of translation. It's also a question of understanding. So let's take a look at the beginning, maybe. We'll start with page 24, and if everyone could just take a minute or two, and maybe 5 minutes, and a lot of times what we like to do is to grab a chavrusa, if you could, the guy next to you, and try to come up with as many questions as you can. So maybe what we'll do is, we'll do it like this. Well, first we'll just start quickly with halach ma'anya. We'll just take 2-3 minutes for halach ma'anya, and just up from yachatz to halach ma'anya, and then we'll speak about that, and then we'll do manashtana until the end of that. So take a look at the beginning, from the top of the page till halach ma'anya. Take 2 minutes, just go over it, and come up with as many questions as you can. Okay, grab a chavrusa if you could.
Why in the middle? Why? Smaller one is put back.
So you don't break it in two. You have to. It's not. You don't break it in half. You break it in two. Interesting. I thought you broke it in half.
No. The larger is
Consciously.
he puts the smaller part back. The larger part is given on as Yafikona, because then it has to be used to go around for everybody else afterwards.
So the obvious question is it the bread of freedom or the bread of slavery? And what's the difference between hungry and needy?
Why are we talking about the present or talking about the future? How about the past? Why are we?
Well, I think there's lots of different forms of enslavement. Enslavement to a government, there's enslavement to a master, there's enslavement to...
Okay, so maybe let's pull together over here. Sometimes what we do is we go around and try to gather up the questions, or maybe just in order to try to cover some ground, I'll just say over some of the questions. So, first question, what is this? What are we saying? What would you say the message of, what are you saying? This is the bread that our fathers ate. Anyone who's hungry, come and eat. Anyone who needs to come and celebrate Pesach. This year we're here, next year we'll be in Israel, this year we're slaves, next year we'll be free. What is the
introduction?
What?
It's the introduction.
What is introduction to?
To the Seder.
How does it introduce the Seder? Also,
talking about the people. Who's supposed to be here? Who's welcome here?
So we're inviting people.
Yeah.
You skipped the visual aids before.
What?
Yeah.
You skipped. That's the answer.
Yeah, but that begs another question. Why are we inviting people at that point of the night?
Very good question.
People? There should be somebody walking around outside there to drag in.
Yeah.
It really is.
That's right.
It's always been a strange thing.
That's also very good.
Who are you inviting in?
Who are you inviting?
If you're inviting, then why are you doing it from the table? You should be down the street, waving people
Yeah,
in.
do it in shul before.
Right.
Another question is, what's the connection between the sentences? I'm going to say 3 sentences, Have you ever took a test like this? But they have tests like where you have to connect the sentences. So the first sentence is like this: "This is the bread of affliction that our fathers ate in Mitzrayim." Sentence number 1. Anyone who's hungry should come and eat. Anyone who needs should come and have Pesach. Sentence number 2. Sentence number 3. This year we're here. Next year we should be in Eretz Yisrael. This year we're slaves. Next year we should be free. See any connection between 1, 2, and 3?
But isn't it what the fellow said before, just setting up the points that we're going to deal with in the Seder?
No idea. I mean,
Like title and subtitle?
If you want to give me an explanation, you're welcome to. Really, right now we're doing more as questions. I don't see a connection between. I don't understand what you're saying. There's 3 separate sections.
We deal with enslavement in Egypt. We're going to.
It's not saying that. It doesn't say like this. Here, let me give you some subtitles for what we're going to deal with later on. It doesn't say that. Maybe. I mean, maybe it's a possible explanation you're trying to say, but I'm just talking on simple language. You're talking over here, you're saying 3 sentences that don't seem to connect to each other. One sentence is, "This is the bread of affliction our fathers ate in Mitzrayim." One sentence is, "Everyone who's hungry should come and eat." And one sentence is, "Next year we should be in Yerushalayim." They don't seem to have too much of a connection to each other.
Well, maybe you could think of this like you were saying last week. You're supposed to look at yourself as though you were going to say, so this could be what they said in Egypt. They had the korban, right?
Could be.
And so they're opening their doors to anyone who might, rather than sort of trying to hide from the Egyptians, they were saying, open your doors, saying, anyone who wants to see what we're doing, come and see. This year, anyone who wants to partake of it, come. This year we're slaves. Next year, this year we're here. Next year we'll be in Eretz Yisrael, because they were going to go over Eretz Yisrael right away.
There's still, I hear what you're saying. It's a possible explanation, but let's stick with the questions for now. Then I'll tell you, there's many different answers. I haven't found that many that I understood 100%, but I'll tell you one answer that I understood, which kind of gives a flow to the whole thing. So, another question over here is this like a fundamental like introduction to Magid, or is this more, where does Magid start? Like, is this the beginning of Magid? Is this the introduction? If it is, it's an interesting way of introducing it. It doesn't really introduce anything. It's not like a, so, just a simple answer is like this. What do we do before, right before we did Yachatz? Just a simple answer just to get a simple flow in the Haggada. So what we just did was Yachatz. Yachatz was we broke the middle matzah.
Yachatz could just as easily have been inserted before you did before you ate the matzah.
Before you ate the karpas.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It's still allowed here.
Yachatz?
Why are you breaking? You're taking it out, breaking it.
We break it for a reason.
Still allowed here.
That's not why we do Yachatz. Everything's to raise curiosity, but the reason why we do Yachatz is because Lachamayni. So the Gemara says like this. The Pasuk calls it Lechem Oini. Pasuk calls Matzah Lechem Oini. The Gemara says there's 2 different explanations to the word Lechem Oini. But the Pasuk shot is Lechem Oini means it's poor man's bread. Right? So we do Yachatz. The reason why we do Yachatz is because it's supposed to be poor man's bread. And poor man's bread, the way of a poor person is he eats in pieces. Either because that's all he gets pieces, or because he breaks it off to save for later. He can't eat a whole thing now. He wants to have a little bit now, saves a little bit for later. So that's how we break the Yachatz. And that's what we do next. We explain why do we just break the law? Yeah, why do we just do it? So the first sentence is an explanation to Yachatz. Halach ma'anya, this is the lechem oini, that's why we just broke it, because this is lechem oini. Be an interesting shot, nice simple shot, why what we're saying? So we just did Yachatz, and now we're explaining. Especially the art scroll says, now, it's actually brought down halacha a little differently, but the art scroll says the broken matzah is lifted for all to see, as the head of the household begins with the following brief explanation of the proceedings, right? So if you follow the art scroll and you pick up the broken matzah, very nice shot, right? Pick up the broken matzah and you say, this is the bread of affliction our fathers ate in Mitzrayim. In Shulchan Aruch it's brought down, they lift up the whole Ka'ara. So I don't know where the art scroll gets this. I mean, I saw others say it also, but the art scroll says you pick up the broken matzah, so very good. So you're explaining Yachatz. Why do we just break the matzah? Because this matzah represents the lechem oini that our fathers ate in Mitzrayim. Good? Now this is an example of the Michtav Eliyahu was talking about. We're teaching children we use certain techniques. What are the techniques? So one of the techniques is a visual aid. So you pick up the broken matzah, you pick up the matzah, you say, look, we just broke it because this is lechem oni, this is poor man's bread. So you're sort of acting it out and you're showing it.
Wasn't the matzah actually eaten, before they left?
It's an interesting question.
They weren't eating it on a day-to-day
So there's an
basis.
interesting question which we'll talk about. I don't know if I'm going to get up to it by lunch and learn. What I'm trying to do at this point is Haggada is big, and at night I'm up to closer towards the end. So what I was going to do maybe was go a little slower in the beginning by lunch, and then if you want to come to both, at night I'm much further ahead, and then we'll do the end. So later on, at the end of the Haggada, it talks about matzah. That's going to be the last night shir. Is going to discuss this shiloh. So that's in 1, 2, 3 weeks. I mean, not this week, 2 weeks from tonight. We'll talk about the shiloh of matzah. When do they eat matzah? Why do they eat matzah? What do we eat matzah for? If anyone wants to think about it, they can get back to me and tell me, why do we eat matzah? What's so special about matzah? I don't have such a great answer yet. So if anyone wants, they can help me out with that. But anyways, so we pick up the middle matzah and we say, this is the poor man's bread of Mitzrayim, and that's why we just broke it. Right? Now, without connecting the dots yet, we then go and we invite the poor people, right? So now, Harry asked the question, which is the obvious question, right? What are you doing? You'll go invite poor people. What are you doing? Who's going to hear you? So the Rishonim asked this question. You hear it? It's not your question alone, it's a good question. The Rishonim already asked the question, and they say that some people say that the pshat is that it used to be that they lived very closely together. They lived like almost on top of each other in like ghettos and stuff, and they would open their door and they would say it, and people would hear and they would come. They would actually wait outside and wait till someone said Kol Dichon Yeshveicho, and then they would come in. There was poor people out in the streets. They would hear it and they would come. Nowadays, actually today, and the Avud Ram is talking about in his times already, he says it's silly where you go invite people. He says this is the minhag that they used to say, so we still say it. But when they instituted the minhag, there was actually people who would hear it outside, and they would come in, and they would come and join the Seder. So,
but it also reminds us that if you find out there's a Jew that's not invited to a Seder beforehand.
So what you should do, right? So what he says, the Avud Ram says, is we also are Mekayim this. Before the Seder, we do Ma'os Chita. So I just suggest that, maybe tell your children or whatever, if they're understanding what's going on and they're understanding that they're inviting in the poor people now, you might want to mention to them that the Rambam says that any student that doesn't have poor people there is like, I forgot the words, but whatever, it's bad. So, but the idea is that we give Ma'os Chita before, we give money before Pesach in order that they could have their own students. So hopefully, if anyone needs to know where to go, there's someone in the room here who runs Ma'os Chita project, right? And but the point is that we do give food before, we do give money before, and we try to have people. So we do sort of have poor people at our Seder. But at the time when they said it, they were actually inviting people, and people did come. So,
but in those days they didn't do that, right? In those days, they didn't donate money to the poor people so they could have their own Seder. They just invited them in.
Well, maybe if they would have had enough money. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly. I don't think they did both.
Most citizens is very old.
I think it's one of the earlier Takanos, yes. Even with most of them, maybe those people didn't have. Whatever. So here's the way some people explain it. Basically, the point of the whole paragraph is one point. It's inviting in the poor people. But it's a combination. It goes like this. Here's the poor man's bread that our fathers ate in Mitzrayim. And look, we were all once poor. We all once went through this. There's a circle of life. We were all once poor, so don't feel bad. And therefore, kol dichvan, anyone who's poor, come in and eat. You're talking to the person's heart, and you're saying to him, don't feel bad. We were all once poor. Look, this represents that we were all once poor back in Mitzrayim. So, this is the poor man's bread that our fathers ate in Mitzrayim. And therefore, don't feel bad. Anyone who's hungry, come and eat. And then we talk to them even more, and we say to them, next year hopefully we'll be free. Next year hopefully we'll be in Yerushalayim, and then we'll all be rich. So, basically, because another question is, I forgot to mention this question, but at the end of the whole Seder we say L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, right? Normally at the end of a party, at the end of something we do, we say L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, right? At the end of a wedding, at the end of things we say L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, right? We don't usually say it in the beginning. afterwards you say, oh, next year we should be in Yerushalayim. Why in the beginning? So the way that they explain it is like this. This whole paragraph is doing one thing. It's inviting in the poor people. And so we pick up the middle matzah. We say, look, this is what we just did. We just did yachatz. We just broke it because this represents poor man's bread. We all were once poor. And then we turn to the people outside and we say, everyone who's poor should come in and join us. And then we say, then we say something nice to them too. And next year we should all be free. We should all be in Yerushalayim. You shouldn't need to have to come join us.
Isn't it speaking about more, because the first request is for those that are hungry should come and eat, and the second is those who are needy should celebrate.
Those who need, like the needs of Pesach, like they may not be hungry, they might have enough food, but they don't have maror, charesis, they don't have all the different things that they need for the Seder. That's one shot. It's called Ditzur Yesegis, that means they don't have what they need to celebrate the Pesach. They don't have enough for Pesach.
Is that a physical need?
Yeah, like maror, charesis, they don't
But
have...
isn't that covered in the hunger?
You could be hungry, I can give you bread. Thank you.
Hungry don't have anything. You need extra things. You need wine.
You don't have the 4 cups of wine, you don't have other things.
Maybe somebody who's
Could be
alone.
that you can afford a meal, but not...
This is what they say. I'm not saying my own shot. That's what they say. That's what they're trying to say. I mean, there's other pshatim, but that's the simple pshat.
Great.
But don't we have like an inferiority complex? Why do we still refer to ourselves as slaves?
Why do we still refer to ourselves as slaves?
Sitting around drinking wine?
What?
See, slaves outside the land of Israel, but inside the land of Israel.
We're also considered slaves. No, fakir, it's the opposite. Next year we should be there. So why does it say, why double lashon? It says this year we should be free. This year we're here. Next year we should be there. This year we're slaves. Next year we should be bnei chayim. Because what we mean is, even the people in Eretz Yisrael are avadim, because what it means is that when Klal Yisrael is being run like it's supposed to be run under a halachic rule, where we don't have neighbors all around us with bombs and guns and whatever trying to kill us, then that's when we're going to really be free. This is not called freedom. Living in Golus, living under rulerships, or even in Eretz Yisrael, living with all the different things that we're living with, that's not freedom. That's called still antachas l'goyim. Being free means there was a time when Klal Yisrael was free in its land. In the times of the first base of Mikdash, when Klal Yisrael they had their own kings and they ruled their own land and whatever, they weren't under threat always like this. But now who's our leaders? It's not called freedom. Sorry, I'm moving to ourselves and wants to be free.
But even in the times of the Christmas English, I don't know if it's free of outside.
Times of the first base Mikdash is the only time that they ruled on their own land.
But they were still...
They weren't under dominion. Yeah.
They were never...
No, but they weren't under dominion of other. They weren't paying taxes to other places. Second base Mikdash. Okay, fine. So that's a simple shot in Halach Ma'anya, and that also shows one of the places where we have a visual aid. Okay, so next part of that Haggada is just one line over here. It says the Seder plate is removed, and the second of the 4 cups of wine is poured. Right? So what's this business of the Seder plate being removed? Why do we remove the Seder plate? So we remove the Seder plate in order to get the child to ask. What's he going to ask? Why'd you take off the plate? What are you going to answer him? So you'll ask. Right? So what's he going to say? Right? What?
It's not written here.
Yeah, but what does it mean? It means like this. You all walk into the Lunch and Learn program, right? And we put out all the food, and everyone sits down, and then, the waiter comes in, starts taking off the food, right? What would you say? What's going on? Why are you taking away the food? You just put out the food. I came to you. Well, it doesn't make sense, right? So that's the message that we're sending to kids. So what's the answer? The answer is, so you'll ask. It doesn't make sense.
This is an answer we give to a lot of questions at Pesach, it seems.
Right, so that's the question.
Right. It seems to me a very unsatisfying answer.
Right, that's the question I'm asking you. I'm asking you this question. So the answer is...
But I thought you said last week that the idea is always to ask, and when a person...
That's right, so that's the answer. So the way the Miftal Meliov says it is like this. There's 2 steps. One step is, when we say a vart, when you say something, so I ask you a question, it gets you thinking, right? Like just now, I asked you a question, why do we do this? And then I tell you the answer. I could have just said like this, the Seder plate is removed. The reason the Seder plate is removed is because, right? I didn't do that. I said, why? I asked you a question, so now it gets you thinking a little bit. And then I tell you the answer, now it's already, you're more interested in listening. So that's an aid in teaching. That the Mishnah says you can learn from the Seder. An aid in teaching is ask the question first, and then give the answer. Better than that, if you want to teach your children, is get them to ask the question. So one is, I tell you the question. The other one is better, I'll hand you out the place, and you look it over, and you come up with as many questions as you can. Now you're asking the question. Now you're even more interested.
But the second time you say to me, as I'm a child,
One second.
the reason you asked
One
is so
second.
you would ask.
One second.
I'm not asking anymore.
1 second. So the point is like this. The point is what we're doing is we're doing strange things. Why are we doing strange things? Because we're doing strange things because we want the kid to ask. But Taisus explains, this is Taisus, in our Rebsachim, if you want I can show it to you. After that I have no more questions. Taisus explains that the pshat is, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get him to ask, to open up his mind, to ask. And once he asks, what will happen is, the nature is, once you start asking, you'll start asking more. Once your mind's on, it's working, it's going, why'd you take out the food? We took out the food so you'll start paying attention. Now notice other things. Now he'll ask you better questions. Hey, why is there matzah on the table? Hey, why is there maror on the table, right? He'll start to inquire. Now he already knows the answers. He already learned it in school. He already knows the maror is coming. This gets him interested. This gets him curious. This gets him asking. Once he starts asking, it opens up his mind. You hear? So an answer for all these questions are, anytime we ask a question where the answer is so you'll ask, an answer to that is because you'll ask, and that will lead you to ask other questions, and that will open up your mind, that will get you interested, and that is a tool for the Seder night. We'll see in a minute, there's two types of mitzvahs about Yetzias Mitzrayim. One is called Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, one is called Zechiras Yetzias Mitzrayim. Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim is on the Leil HaSeder. It's one time a year. Zechiras Yetzias Mitzrayim is every single day, 2 times a day. What's the difference between them? So there's a few differences. But Reb Chaim Brisker used to point out 3 differences. Reb Chaim Soloveitcher pointed out 3 differences. One of them is this. Has to be Derech She'elo Tshuva. Derech She'elo Tshuva means that it has to be question and answer. So one of the 3 differences is Derech She'elo Tshuva. In other words, you cannot just come in and say, you cannot just walk in and say the Seder. You have to start off with questions. And that's why the Haggada starts off with the Manashtana. The Manashtana is a fundamental point in the Haggada because your child is coming and asking you. When the child asks, it gets them interested, and Mamela, you're able to teach him properly. And that's one of the fundamental points of the Seder is for the child to ask. And what I would just like to point out is that in English we say like this. What do you say to your kids? You say the Manashtana, right? In Yiddish, you call it fragging the Manashtana. There's a very big difference between saying the Manashtana and asking the Manashtana.
The fair kashas.
Right. There's a very big difference between asking and saying. Saying the 4 questions means you're just, you memorize it, you're just rattling up. It has to be, the point is to try to have a question, to try to have them interested. So running out of time, I was going to really give out more time to go through it, but let's take a look at Manashtana for a minute. Take 1 minute, look at Manashtana, take 2 minutes, look at Manashtana, and I answer quickly. Just come up with as many questions as you can, you got 2 minutes. 12:49, 12:51.
It's only one question. One question, 4 statements.
Heard this already.
Should I hear this one?
It's much more fun when you go around and you ask everyone what questions they have, but we don't have enough time. And you get to see everyone's everyone has different approaches and personalities. To learn more about everyone. More fun. Okay, so one question is like this. How many questions are there?
Four.
4. Okay.
4 answers, 1 question.
4 answers? Interesting.
There's one question and 4 pieces of evidence. Put forward to the one question.
Okay.
4 questions, and then there's 4 comments. 1 question, 4 comments.
Okay.
1 question and 4 answers. I don't know.
What are your 4 answers? This is the answer?
Well, really, the answer doesn't answer.
Okay, the Pashup Pshat is like this.
Doesn't answer the question.
This is because we're running out of time, but the Pashup Pshat is like this. The one question, and there's 4 pieces of evidence to show that question. In other words, like this. The question is like this. Why is tonight different than all these other nights? Now, let me explain. What do I see different? I mean, what do you mean, why is it different? Well, what do you see different? So now let me explain. There's a lot of differences. But we do something interesting. It's also a teaching aid. It's called contrasting. When you contrast things well, the better you contrast 2 things, the more you show the difference. So, could have said like this. Why do we eat matzah? Why do we eat maror? Why do we dip? Why do we leave? That's what I could have said. None of that, it would have gone a lot quicker. Right? But that's not the point over here. What we're trying to do is like this. Even the way it says it could have said like this. We eat matzah tonight. That's weird. Right? But it goes like this. On all other nights, on one hand, let's take a look. Let's compare. On all other nights, let's look what we do. On chametz matzah. Okay, let's put that over here. On this side, kuloi matzah. We only eat matzah, right? So we're contrasting. Contrast. That's also called the teaching aid. Kind of contrast. So we're saying 4 differences. So we're asking a question. Pashup says there's one question. Why is tonight different? And here's 4 differences that take place.
Why is it on the comment 2? It says that I guess he's trying to infer that we only eat maror as a vegetable. We just ate karpas.
No, it doesn't say only. You take a look, and most people say like this. If you take a look, in the first one it says kuloi matzah. Kuloi matzah means all matzah, but in the second one it doesn't say kuloi maror. The reason why it says kuloi matzah is because you can't eat chametz. As opposed to maror, you can eat other vegetables.
But the problem with the first question is not true, that on all other nights we have the choice of eating chametz or matzah. Because they say it's a Pesach. You could have said all other seasons of the year.
That's a good question. I'll tell you the answer. He doesn't know about the next days yet. He's not up to the next days.
So, I mean, as a good father, you should correct the false premise of the question.
In the 4th question also we say kulanu mesubim. Why do we say kulanu mesubim in the 4th question? The reason is because everyone has to recline. Even avodim, even servants, even low, poor people, even they have to recline because everyone has to act like a king. So what's the answer? One of the proofs, I mean, this is not the only way to learn. Some people learn there's 4 questions, and some people learn that the answers are all spread out through Haggada. But one of the simple way to learn is if there's 4 questions, where's the answers? In fact, we never do really answer one of the questions at least, which is why do we lean? It never says anywhere in the Haggada the reason why we lean is because. It never says in the Haggada the reason why we dip twice is because, or at least not clearly. There are people who explain it from other places.
Originally, that 3rd question was different.
Right, that's true. That's true.
So, but if you look at the first 3 questions, it's matzah, maror, and Pesach, right?
You're right.
Which are answered later.
You're right.
So these
But it's also interesting that we wait all the way till there to answer it. You're right. I hear what you're saying.
So
there are people who learn like that.
people start leaving.
You're right. There are people who say that. But
There are people who say that there's originally 5 questions. These were all there and they were 6.
No. There's 4 questions and one was switched because it doesn't apply nowadays. No, you can't have 5 questions.
But it's
People come and say
5 questions? There's 4 questions. What do you mean? It's 4. 4 is a fundamental number of the Seder night.
It's not odd that we wait till the end though to answer the questions because that sustains the interest and.
Right. I hear that is one answer. But
One question is answered by Abu Believer, and it's close.
well, what about the fact that we don't answer the question that we ask in our Haggada?
Which question is that?
Dipping. What is that?
Like I said,
Why do we dip?
originally
I heard you said it, but I asked you a question after you said it. It doesn't satisfy me because there's a question over here that's not answered. Why don't we answer that one? Forget about the original one.
We do answer.
Where? What's the answer?
Yeah.
Why do we dip twice? Why? And there's no real clear answer why we dip twice. The simple reason why we dip twice is so you'll ask. That's a simple reason. So there is no answer.
Did kings dip twice?
So some people say maybe it shows. Anyways, the simple shot's like this. There's one question. Why is tonight different? Why are we doing all these weird things tonight? One question.
But we haven't yet done those things at this stage in the Seder.
That's a good
We
question.
haven't done any of these things.
We have done a lot of them. The matzah's out, the mar's out.
But he doesn't know the...
we already leaned by the wine.
We've dipped once.
We've dipped once, but he knows that you dip during the meal. It's the extra time, the early one, that's the weird one.
But isn't the difference?
And we washed for the...
Sort of the Seder with Well, because you're supposed to be...
You're saying pshat. That's not... You show me it somewhere. Why we dip twice.
But once for the more, once for the...
Yeah, but why? Why do we dip twice? It doesn't say it. There's no... whatever pshat you're going to say, there's pshatim, but the Gemara says, so the kids will ask. That's it. So the simple pshat is like this. The guys, the son, or you yourself are asking one question. Why is tonight different? And there's one answer. Because because we used to be slaves of Parmesan. Hashem took us out. Hashem took us out. And that's why tonight is different. One question, why is tonight different? The reason is because tonight's the night where Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim, and therefore we act differently. One question with one answer. That's a simple shot. A simple shot. Not everyone learns like that. Mr. Brewer says, by the way, that sometimes people keep their kids up just for Manashtana. It's a big mistake. You have to at least say the answer. The answer is also, it seems like this could be enough to be Yotze, the whole concept of... Yeah, I really wanted to go a little further, which maybe we'll do next time, but just one more point is, one of the other differences between the mitzvah of Zechira and Sipur is the idea of Maschel Begnus and Masayim B'Shvach, which means that you're supposed to start with the low and end with the high. That's why we say, we were slaves of Mitzrayim, and then Hashem took us out. Why do we say it like that? Because if I tell you just a simple story, I'll tell you a beautiful story. There was a girl and she could see. Very emotional, right? It's a Geshmaka story, right? But if I tell you like this, there was a girl and she couldn't see for 10 years, and one day she woke up and she was able to see. Now that's a cool story, right? I mean, if I filled in the details. So that's a story where it starts off someone can't. We only really appreciate something when we see the lack of it. So therefore you have to be maskul b'gnus. If you start with the gnus, then you're Masayim b'shvach, which is also another teaching aid that we use over here that Mr. Malayo points out. So again, another difference between Sipur and Zechira is the idea of being maskul b'gnus and Masayim b'shvach. We'll talk more about that as we go along. So for future, Mr. Hashem will go a little slower, not so much slower, but we'll go more through the beginning by the lunch and learn, and at night more up to the end. So if anyone wants to come to both, they're welcome to. I'll see you tonight. If not, see you next week.